I think classical music is actually a really good model for looking at some of the other problems that we have in the world that are larger than musical problems. And one of the reasons why is because of the peculiar way we study Western classical music, which is by worshiping music and musical situations that were appropriate 200 years ago. So we sit in concerts the way people sat in concerts in Mozart's time, the way people sat in concerts in Beethoven's time. We play the same instruments, we play the same repertoire. And how do we study this? You know, when we are interested in Western classical music, is we study it by worshiping that repertoire. And that repertoire is worthy of our respect and our love. It's great, right? You know, I am as nerdy as they come, so I love this music. But it is very interesting because the message you get is the message that something that happened a long time ago was great and was perfect, and we have lost it. And our job now is to remind ourselves only of the things that we have lost. And that's a very miserable way to live. And it's possible to see how that attitude of saying that these institutions which used to exist, that we have mythologized, that we have invented in our memory, are the things that we need to perpetuate and rebuild, and anything which cannot touch them is inadequate. You know, anything we do now that does not help to remind us of how great we used to be, that's a terrible way to live. And in fact, it was not the way that classical musicians 200 years ago thought about themselves. Because, of course, anyone who is making something in the present moment is in the present moment. So we have built this thing in classical music which is very strange. It's full of institutions and full of rules and odd ways of looking at things. And it keeps us from noticing other things which are possible, and other things that may express us now better, and other things we need now in order to move into the future. I love classical music, and I love these rules, and I actually love these institutions. So I find the idea of going to a concert, of sitting in an audience, of listening quietly for an hour, to be a kind of almost religious experience for me. You know, I love that. But it's also worth asking ourselves, you know, we have these musicians who are trained to do anything, and yet we only ask them to do something that fits squarely in the tradition of what we have inherited. But they can do anything. You know, our musicians are better trained now. Our professional musicians are better trained than musicians at any other time in music history. It's an odd thing to be a classical musician, I have to say, because you love something and you recognize how peculiar it is to love it. You know, when you talk to anyone else in the world about music, everyone in the world loves music. But most people, when you ask them to say what kind of music they love, their first love is not going to be Western classical music. So I've always felt that being as nerdy as I am, and as much a classical music person as I am, part of that comes with the obligation to justify to my friends who are interested in pop music or hip hop or rock and roll or jazz, why my kind of music is exactly the same kind of music. It does the same thing for me that their kind of music does for them.